Since you couldn't give us an heir, this marriage is over." My father-in-law said it like he was announcing the weather, calm and dry, with one hand around a glass of red wine and the other resting on a thick folder in the middle of the table. When I opened it and saw the divorce papers, the room went dead quiet except for the soft hum of the chandelier above us. I looked at my husband. Ethan didn't look back. He just stared down into his wine glass like the answer to his whole life was floating in there. For a second, I really thought I was going to throw up right there on that white tablecloth his mother only brought out for important family dinners. My mouth went dry. My fingers turned cold, the paper shook a little in my hand, and I hated that they could see it. Victor leaned back in his chair like he'd already won. "It's for the best," he said. "You've had 3 years, we've been patient." Patient. That word almost made me laugh. 3 years of doctor visits. 3 years of pills, blood work, cold waiting rooms, and fake smiles. 3 years of people asking me when I was going to make Ethan a father like I was some machine that just needed a tune-up. 3 years of his mother dropping baby clothes at my house for good luck, and Victor making little comments over steak dinners about family legacy and the Dalton name. And through all of it, Ethan kept saying, "Just ignore them, babe. That's how Dad is. That's how Dad is." Funny how men say that when Dad isn't the one being cut open by words every Sunday night. I slowly turned the pages. My name was there, Ethan's name was there, neat lines, legal language. Already prepared, already decided. Nobody had called me, nobody had warned me. They had set a place for me at dinner, poured me wine, served roast chicken, and waited until dessert to hand me my own marriage like it was a bill to settle. I lifted my eyes again and looked at Ethan. "You knew," his jaw tightened, but he still didn't meet my eyes. "Lena," that was all he had, just my name, barely even that. Victor clicked his tongue. "Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." I looked at him then, really looked at him, his silver cufflinks, his smug little half-smile, the expensive watch, the soft, pink face of a man who had never once been told no and believed money made him right. Ugly? He had no clue what ugly looked like. Across the table, Ethan's mother, Marion, dabbed the corners of her mouth with a napkin. "We do care about you, Lena. You're a lovely girl, but marriage is about family. A lovely girl, not a wife. Not a person, not someone they'd watched break a little more every month, just a lovely girl who failed the assignment." I should have screamed. I should have flipped the table. I should have hurled that wine right into Victor's face and let the glass shatter at his polished loafers. Instead, I picked up the pen. That surprised all of them. Victor's eyebrows lifted. Marion froze. Ethan finally looked at me, and for the first time all night I saw something move in his face. Fear. I signed the first page, then the second. Then the third. The pen scratched across the paper so loudly it almost sounded rude. My hand got steadier with each signature. By the last page I wasn't shaking at all. I set the pen down carefully. "There," I said. Done. Nobody spoke. You could feel the whole table shift. They had expected tears, begging, maybe a little dignity they could crush for fun. They had not expected peace. And that was the thing about peace. Sometimes it's not surrender. Sometimes it's a loaded gun sitting quiet on the table. My best friend Maya had been sitting beside me the whole night, silent, still, one hand wrapped around her water glass. Victor had insisted she could stay because there's no point hiding family business from outsiders now. Big mistake. Maya stood up. Her chair made a slow scraping sound across the hardwood floor. Every head turned toward her. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a brown envelope. Not thick, not dramatic, just plain office paper folded shut. Then she stepped around the table, calm as Sunday morning, and placed it right in front of Victor. "You should read this before anybody leaves," she said. Victor frowned. "What is this?" Maya smiled, small and sharp. "The truth." The color drained from his face before he even opened it. That was when Ethan finally looked scared. Not uneasy, not guilty, scared. I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands in my lap. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my voice came out smooth. "Go ahead," I said. "You've all waited long enough." Victor slid one finger under the flap, and the second he saw the first page inside, I knew this night was about to stop being mine. Victor didn't open the envelope all the way, not at first. He just stared at the top page like his eyes had stopped working. His fingers tightened around the paper. The room felt colder somehow, even with the fire still burning in the stone fireplace behind him. "What is this?" he asked again, but this time his voice wasn't smooth. It came out rough, thin. Maya didn't answer. Neither did I. Ethan pushed his chair back an inch. "Dad," Victor folded the page fast, too fast, and shoved it halfway back into the envelope like he could make it disappear. "This is nonsense." That one sentence told me everything I needed. If it were really nonsense, he would have laughed. Instead, his hand was shaking. Marian looked between him and me, confused. "Victor," he stood up so suddenly his chair hit the floor behind him. "We're done here." But I stayed seated. For 3 years I had been the one swallowing words, the one smoothing things over. The one telling myself that marriage had hard seasons and families were messy and love took patience. That night I finally saw the ugly truth. Patience only works when the other person is worth waiting for. Ethan and I had met when I was 27 and still dumb enough to think quiet men were deep men. He had that soft voice, that careful smile, that whole calm and safe thing going on. On our first date, he remembered how I liked my coffee and walked me to my car in the rain, holding his jacket over my head like something out of a movie. I fell for him hard. Back then, he seemed different from his family. Less cold, less polished. He would roll his eyes when Victor talked business at dinner and squeeze my knee under the table when Marian asked invasive questions. I thought that meant he was on my side. Turns out silence can wear the same clothes as kindness. The first year of our marriage was good, not perfect but real. Sunday pancakes, grocery runs, late-night takeout in bed. We painted the guest room a soft cream and joked about baby names before we were even trying. Ethan wanted a boy named Liam. I wanted a girl named June. We laughed, kissed, made plans. That was before the tests. Before the temperature charts on my nightstand, before the apps on my phone, before every month began to feel like hope and end like grief. At first, Ethan acted supportive. He came to the first doctor's appointment. He held my hand in the waiting room. He kissed my forehead when I cried in the car afterward. "We're in this together," he told me. I believed him. Then little things started changing. He stopped coming inside with me at appointments. Said work was too busy. He stopped asking how I felt after test results. He stopped touching me unless it was time to try. That word alone made my skin crawl after a while. Try, like we were assembling furniture. Like love had turned into a task on a calendar, and then his family started circling. Marian began sending me herbal teas, church prayer cards, links to fertility specialists I never asked for. Victor got bolder. At dinners, he'd talk about legacy and bloodlines like we were living in the 1800s. One night, while cutting into a steak, he said, "A family without a next generation is a dead end." Marian whispered Victor, like she was correcting his table manners, not his cruelty. Ethan just kept eating. I waited for him to say something, anything. He never did. That should have been the moment I saw him clearly, but love can make a smart woman look straight at a crack in the wall and call it lighting. The first real shift came after our second specialist. The doctor was kind, direct, and careful with her words. She said more testing was needed for both of us. Both. She looked at Ethan when she said it. I remember that because he smiled too fast and said, "Of course." But in the parking lot, he lit up like a man under attack. "So now it's me," he snapped. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." I stood there holding a folder full of lab forms while the wind whipped my hair into my face. "She wants to test both of us, Ethan. That's normal." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Right, convenient." That was the first time he made me feel like I had done something wrong just by needing the truth. After that, the small tells started piling up like pennies in a jar. He began keeping his phone face down. He deleted call logs. He took work trips that made no sense. And when I asked simple questions, he'd kiss my temple and say I was stressed or emotional or reading too much into things. That's the thing about gaslighting. It doesn't start with fire, it starts with fog. And by the time you realize you can't see straight, you're already lost. At dinner that night, staring at the brown envelope in Victor's hand, I thought about every time they made me feel small. Every time I apologized for pain I didn't cause. Every time Ethan let me stand alone while his family measured my worth by a crib that stayed empty. Victor turned toward me, face pale, jaw tight. "What exactly are you trying to do?" he asked. I met his eyes and gave him the calmest smile of my life. "Finish what you started." And that was when Ethan said the one thing that told me he still had no clue how bad this was about to get. "Lena," he said quietly, "please don't make a scene." I almost laughed in his face because the scene hadn't even started yet. The first time I knew something was wrong, it wasn't because of a big fight. It was because Ethan got too careful, not kinder, not sweeter, just careful, careful with his words, careful with his phone, careful with where he put papers, receipts, and his laptop. It was like he was living with me, sleeping next to me, kissing me goodbye in the morning, but some part of him had already moved out and locked the door behind him. At first, I blamed myself. That's what I had been trained to do by then. If he seemed distant, I thought maybe I was too sad. If he pulled away, maybe I was making him feel pressured. If he snapped at me, maybe I had asked at the wrong time, with the wrong tone, with the wrong face. That kind of thinking will break you down piece by piece. One Tuesday morning, I stood in the kitchen making coffee when Ethan walked in already dressed for work. Crisp blue shirt, expensive watch, that same calm face he wore like armor. "I may be late tonight," he said, grabbing his keys. "Late how?" He shrugged. "Dinner with a client." "Which client?" He smiled like I was cute. "Since when do you care about account names?" That little comment stung more than it should have. Since when do you care? Like I was annoying for noticing my husband had stopped telling me where he went at night. I handed him his coffee anyway. "You've had a lot of late dinners lately." He kissed my cheek, quick and empty. "You worry too much." Then he left. I stood there in the kitchen with the smell of coffee and his cologne still hanging in the air, and something in my gut turned hard. That evening he came home after midnight. No leftovers, no story. No real eye contact. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and loosened his tie. "You're awake?" I waited. "You shouldn't have." That answer sat between us like a slap. I looked at him. "How was dinner?" "Fine." "With who?" He exhaled through his nose. "Lena, not tonight." I folded my arms. "It was a simple question, and I gave you a simple answer." Then he walked past me. That was Ethan's thing. He never exploded unless he had to. He just made everything feel like too much, too emotional, too unnecessary. By the end of the conversation, I'd be the one apologizing for asking where my husband had been at midnight. A week later, I found the first crack. He had left his suit jacket on the chair in our bedroom. I was taking it to the closet when something slipped from the inside pocket and hit the floor. A folded receipt, not from a restaurant. From a hotel. My stomach dropped so fast I had to sit down. I read it twice. 1 room, 2 guests, 3 hours, paid in cash. The date matched one of his client dinners. I remember staring at that little paper in my hand, feeling like the room had tilted just a little to the left. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there on the edge of the bed and listened to my own breathing. When Ethan came home that night, I showed it to him. He looked at it for maybe half a second before tossing it onto the dresser. "That? Yes, that." He rubbed his face like I was exhausting him. "A client needed privacy." "A hotel room?" "It was a meeting suite." "It says room, same difference." "No, it isn't." He stared at me, then gave me that slow, tired look I had started to hate. "You really need to stop jumping to the worst conclusion every time you see something you don't understand." There it was again, fog. I held up the receipt. "Then help me understand." "It was business." "In cash," he shrugged. "The guy preferred discretion." I laughed then, a short, sharp sound. "You hear yourself?" His eyes went cold. "You're obsessed lately." Obsessed, not hurt, not confused, not trying to hold her marriage together. Obsessed. That word followed me for days. I told Maya about it over lunch, expecting her to calm me down. Maya had known me since college. She was smart, grounded, the kind of woman who noticed everything without needing attention for it. Instead of brushing it off, she asked one question. "Did he look scared or annoyed?" I blinked. "What? When you showed him the receipt, did he look scared you found it or annoyed you asked?" I thought about it. "Annoyed," I said slowly. Maya nodded once. "Then I don't think the hotel is the biggest lie." That sat in my chest all day. A few days later, the bigger lie found me. I was looking for printer paper in Ethan's home office. He hated when I went in there, which should have told me enough by itself. His desk was neat like always, too neat. One framed photo of us from our beach trip. One black pen lined up perfectly beside a leather notebook. A drawer slightly open. Inside was a file, white, plain, no label. I almost closed it. Almost. Then I saw the name on the top page, Ethan Dalton. Below that, I saw the clinic name from the fertility center we had visited almost a year and a half earlier. My hands went numb. I pulled the paper out and read every line, then I read it again. Then a third time because my brain kept refusing to understand what my eyes were seeing. It was his test result. Not mine, his, and right there in clean medical language was the truth he had let me bleed for. Severe male factor infertility, low probability of natural conception, further intervention required. The page trembled in my hand, dated 18 months earlier, 18 months. I sank into his desk chair so hard it rolled back an inch. All this time I had been swallowing pills, blaming my body, taking their comments, sitting through Marion's pity and Victor's cruelty while Ethan already knew. He knew, and he let them pin it on me anyway. Then I saw the second page, an email printout from Ethan to Victor. Subject line, "Don't tell Mom, I'll handle Lena." My whole body went cold. That was the moment suspicion died. That was the moment I stopped being confused and started becoming dangerous. I don't remember standing up. One second I was in Ethan's office, staring at that lab report with my whole body buzzing, and the next I was on my feet, the paper clenched so hard in my hand it was wrinkled at the edges. My face felt hot, my hands felt cold, and in the middle of all that, one thought kept hitting me over and over like a hammer. He knew it was him. He knew I wasn't the reason. He knew while I cried in bathrooms, sat in clinics, swallowed hormones that made me sick, and let his family look at me like I was a broken piece of furniture they were too polite to throw out. And he said nothing. No, worse than that. He let them keep going. I looked back at the email printout. "Don't tell Mom, I'll handle Lena." Handle me, like I was a mess to manage, a problem to contain, a woman to keep in the dark long enough to stay useful. I heard the front door downstairs open and close. Ethan, for one wild second I thought about shoving the papers back and pretending I'd never seen them, just to buy time. Just to watch him a little longer now that I knew what he was. But I was too angry, too done. I walked out of the office with the report in my hand and found him in the kitchen loosening his tie, one hand on the counter, looking tired in that polished way rich men somehow always manage. He looked up, then he saw my face, then he saw the paper, and everything in him changed. Not guilt, calculation. "Where did you get that?" he asked. I stopped 3 feet away from him. "Your office." His jaw tightened. "You went through my things?" I almost laughed. That was his first move, not denial, not shame, blame. I held up the report between us. "You knew." He stared at me for a moment, saying nothing. Then he reached for the paper. I pulled it back. "Don't," I said. "Lena, calm down." There it was, those 2 words, calm down, like women only ever lose their minds for no reason. "No," I said, "you calm down. You knew for a year and a half." He rubbed his forehead. "It's more complicated than that." I stepped closer. "Then explain it." He looked away. I hated that more than anything, that little turn of his head, that quiet refusal to face what he'd done. Finally he said, "I was going to tell you." I stared at him. That lie was so weak it almost insulted me more than the truth. "When?" I asked. "After your father humiliated me in front of everyone. After your mother handed me another fertility tea. After how many more tests, how many more dinners, how many more months of making me think it was my fault." He slammed his hand on the counter. "It was not that simple." The sound cracked through the kitchen. I flinched. He noticed. And just like that, his voice softened. That was Ethan too. He knew exactly when to lower his tone and act like the reasonable one. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said quietly. I felt something in me go still. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Talk to me like this happened to both of us the same way." "It didn't." He took a step toward me. I was ashamed. I laughed then, but there were tears in my eyes now, hot and angry. "So you let me carry your shame?" His face hardened. "You don't understand what this is like for a man." I just looked at him, that line. That sad, pathetic line, like manhood had forced him to lie, like being embarrassed gave him the right to let me be destroyed. I held up the second paper. "And your father knew too." His eyes flicked to it, just for a second, that was enough. "So he knew," I said again, softer this time. "All those things he said to me, all those comments, all that pressure, he knew it was you." Ethan's silence told me yes before his words ever did. He was trying to protect the family. I swear something inside me almost snapped clean in half. "The family?" I whispered. "I was your family." He looked frustrated now, like I was being unfair. "You're twisting this?" That made me blink. "Twisting this?" I looked around the kitchen, the marble counters, the clean dishes, the vase of white flowers I had changed that morning like any other normal wife in any other normal house, and suddenly it all felt fake. Like a show set built around a lie. "You let me believe I was broken," I said. "I never said that. You didn't have to." That landed. I saw it in his face. For the first time since I found the papers, something real broke through. Not kindness, not remorse, just fear that he had pushed too far and finally lost control of the story. He changed tactics fast. "Lena, listen to me. Dad gets carried away, you know how he is." I was trying to keep things together until I figured out a solution. A solution? His mouth tightened. That was when I knew there was more, not just the lie, not just the test results. More. I stepped toward him so fast he actually backed up. "What solution, Ethan?" He didn't answer. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock over the stove ticking, my own pulse pounding in my ears. Then he said the worst thing yet. "I thought maybe if you believed it was you, it would be easier." I just stared at him. Easier? Easier for who? Not for me, never for me. That was the moment love finally died. Not loudly, not with drama. Just one clean break inside my chest, like a rope pulled too tight for too long, finally giving way. I looked down at the papers in my hand, then back at my husband. And I realized I wasn't standing in my kitchen with a weak man. I was standing with an enemy who had been smiling in my face for 18 months. And if Ethan had a solution, I was about to find out exactly how ugly it was. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at Ethan, waiting for him to finish that sentence. He didn't. He just kept looking at me with that same tight face, like he was trying to calculate how much I knew and how much he could still hide. "What solution?" I asked again. He pulled his tie off fully this time and tossed it onto the counter. "I said I was trying to figure things out. That's not an answer." He let out a slow breath like I was making his life harder. "Because there wasn't a clean answer, okay?" I felt my stomach turn. Clean answer, that was another one of his phrases. He loved phrases that sounded calm and wise and meant absolutely nothing. "No," I said. "Tell me the truth for once." He looked at the floor, then he said, "Dad thought it might be better if we moved forward another way." I waited. The air in the kitchen felt thick. "Another way how?" He still didn't look at me. "A donor?" I blinked. "A donor?" He nodded once. I should have been relieved that he had finally said something plain, but the way he said it made my skin crawl. "You mean sperm donation?" "Yes." "And you were planning to tell me when?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "We were still discussing it." That came out sharper than I meant it to. He looked up then. Bad move, because I saw it in his face before he even spoke. Not just him, not just Victor, more people. "Your parents were discussing my body?" I asked. "It wasn't like that." "It sounds exactly like that." He flinched at my tone, then his face closed again. "You're twisting things." There it was. His favorite line when the truth got too ugly to hold. I stepped back from him. "Let me guess," I said. "You and your father decided that if I never knew your test results, then I'd be desperate enough to agree to anything. Is that it?" He went silent. That silence told me yes. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Wow, Lena, no, don't." I held up my hand. "Did you actually think I'd thank you for that? Did you think I'd feel lucky you found a workaround after letting your family blame me for a year and a half?" His jaw got tight. "I was trying to save our marriage." That hit me so wrong I almost lost my balance. Save our marriage? By lying to me, by letting his father break me down, by making me think my body had failed when he already knew the truth. I looked at him like I had never seen him before, and honestly, I hadn't. Then he said something that made everything worse. Dad also had another option in mind. My chest went cold. "What option?" He hesitated. That tiny pause made my whole body go stiff. "Ethan." He looked away. I took one step closer. "Say it." Finally, he muttered, "A private arrangement." I just stared at him. It took me a second, then it hit. Another woman, a woman whose job would be to carry the heir. Not my child, not my choice. Just some rich man arrangement cooked up by Victor like he was ordering a custom suit. My face must have changed because Ethan immediately said, "It wasn't finalized." I laughed in disbelief. "Finalized? It was just a discussion. You discussed replacing me?" "No, you discussed using my marriage as a shell while some other woman gave your father the grandson he wanted." He slammed his palm against the counter again. "It was not like that." "Then what was it like, Ethan? Explain it in a way that doesn't make you sound like a coward and your father sound insane." He couldn't, because there wasn't a version that fixed it. I stared at him for a long second, then I did the one thing he least expected. I calmed down, not because I forgave him, because I understood him. Men like Ethan can handle tears. They can handle pleading. They can even handle screaming because it lets them act like they're the rational one. What they can't handle is silence from the woman they thought they controlled. I folded the papers neatly, one over the other. His eyes followed my hands. "What are you doing?" he asked. I looked up and smiled, a small smile, nothing warm in it, thinking that made him nervous. Good. I went upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and called Maya. She picked up on the second ring. "You found more, didn't you?" she said. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. "They talked about donor sperm behind my back." She was quiet, then I added, "Victor had another plan too." Her voice changed, sharper now. "What kind of plan?" "A private arrangement." Maya was silent for one full beat, then she said very softly, "Those sick people." I closed my eyes. For the first time since finding the file, I let myself cry. Not the broken crying I'd done in doctors' offices, not the quiet crying into pillows at night. This was hot, angry, humiliated crying. Maya stayed on the line and let me get it out. When I was done, she said, "Listen to me carefully. Do not confront Victor, do not tell Marion, and do not let Ethan know what you're going to do next." I wiped my face. "I already confronted Ethan." "Fine. Then no more." Her voice was steady. "If they built this whole thing on a lie, we find the foundation." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean men like Victor don't get this obsessed over legacy unless there's something rotten under it." That sentence stayed with me all night. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Ethan was asleep beside me, flat on his back, breathing slow, like he had done nothing but have an unpleasant talk with his wife. I looked at him in the blue early morning light and felt nothing. Not sadness, not longing, nothing. I slipped out of bed, took my phone, and went downstairs. By 7:30, Maya was at my door with coffee and her laptop. We sat at my kitchen island like two women planning a robbery. In a way, we were, not of money, of illusion. Maya was better at this stuff than I was. She worked in corporate investigations for a private risk firm. She knew how to search records, read between lines, and notice what other people missed. I used to joke that she could find a skeleton in a closed closet without opening the door. That morning, she didn't joke at all. She opened public records, old business filings, archived interviews, charity gala photos, and property documents tied to the Dalton family name. Victor had spent years building a polished image, old money style, family first language, legacy this, legacy that. But once you looked close, little cracks started showing. A rumor from years back about Victor and Marion separating briefly. A medical leave Victor took in his 30s with no explanation. An old article about a fire at one of Victor's warehouses that disappeared from later profiles. Nothing huge yet. But enough to make Maya lean back and say, "He's hiding something." Then around noon, she found the first real piece. An old scanned county record connected to a lawsuit that had been sealed later but partly indexed in a document archive. Victor's name, a clinic, a date from 34 years ago. Maya clicked it open. I leaned closer. And when I saw the word vasectomy on that page, my whole body went still. For a second, I thought I had read it wrong. I leaned closer to Maya's screen until the words blurred. "No," I whispered. "No way." Maya didn't say anything right away. She just kept scrolling, calm and focused, the way she always got when something real was in front of her. The document was old, badly scanned, half the letters looked faded, but the words were still there. Patient, Victor Dalton, procedure, vasectomy, date, July 14. I looked at the date again, then I did the math, then I looked at Maya. She already knew. "How old is Ethan?" she asked quietly. 33, she nodded once. "And this procedure was done almost 34 years ago." My mouth went dry. We both sat there in silence, the kind that feels loud. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. The whole world kept moving while my brain tried to catch up. Victor Dalton, the man who talked about bloodlines like they were scripture. The man who had spent years making me feel like a failed incubator. The man who threw divorce papers at me because I couldn't give them an heir. And there on Maya's screen was a record that suggested something so ugly, so perfect, I almost couldn't breathe. "What if Ethan knows?" I asked. Maya looked at me. "Then his whole life is built on a lie too." I thought about Ethan's face at dinner, not just guilty, not just nervous, scared. Then I thought about the way Victor had gone pale before even opening the envelope all the way. He knew what was inside, or at least enough to be afraid. Maya kept digging. A second archive led to an old court index. No full file, just mentions. A sealed dispute involving a fertility clinic. Then an old property transfer tied to Marion's maiden family. Then a society column from years ago, all smiles and polished language, talking about baby Ethan as the miracle that restored joy to the Dalton home after a difficult private year. A difficult private year. Maya pointed at the screen. That line matters. Why? Because rich families bury scandals in soft language. I stared at it. A difficult private year, not illness, not grief, not business trouble, something private. Something that could ruin the image. I felt a slow, dangerous kind of calm settle over me, not rage this time. Clarity. Victor had built his whole life around one thing, the Dalton name passed from father to son. He used it like a weapon, he hid behind it, he judged people by it, and now there was a real chance that his precious bloodline wasn't even his. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it fit too perfectly. Maya closed the laptop halfway and looked at me. We need proof, not just smoke, I nodded. How? She thought for a second. 2 ways. 1, we find more records. 2, we let them hand us the rest. I frowned. How do we do that? Her smile was small and cold. By making Victor panic. I stared at her, then I smiled too. That afternoon, I moved through the house like everything was normal. I showered, I changed clothes, I made tea. Ethan stayed in his office on calls for most of the day, and when he finally came downstairs, he looked at me like a man approaching a bomb. "You okay?" he asked. That almost made me laugh in his face. I stirred honey into my tea and said, "I'm tired." He stood there for a moment. "About last night," I looked up. He stopped. Whatever speech he had prepared died in his throat. "Good, your father called," he said instead. There it was. "Did he? He wants to meet tomorrow, all of us." I raised an eyebrow. "A family meeting?" His face tightened. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like this is funny." I took a slow sip of tea. "Nothing about your family is funny, Ethan." He looked away first. Again, that night Maya came back after dark. We sat in my car, parked 2 streets over from Victor and Marion's house, the envelope between us on the center console. "What exactly is in there?" I asked. She tapped the flap once, enough to make him sweat, not enough to finish him. I looked at her. "You planned that?" "Of course." Inside the envelope were copies of what we had found so far. The vasectomy record reference, the clinic index, the society column, just enough pieces to let Victor know someone had started pulling the thread, not enough to show our full hand. "Tomorrow," Maya said, "he'll tell on himself." I looked through the windshield at the dark street ahead. "You sound pretty sure." She gave me a look. "Men like Victor don't confess because they're decent. They confess because they're cornered." I sat back in my seat and thought about all the nights I had cried over tests and appointments and whispered prayers into the dark, all the times I blamed myself. All the times Victor watched me struggle and still chose cruelty. Tomorrow I was going to sit across from him and watch that same cruelty turn into fear. For the first time in a long time, the pain in my chest started to feel useful. I reached for the envelope, ran my fingers along the edge, and pictured Victor's face when he realized the woman he tried to throw away had found the one secret he could never survive. And deep down, I knew tomorrow wouldn't be a meeting. It would be the first crack in the house he built his whole life inside. The next day, I dressed like I was going to a funeral. In a way, I was. I wore a plain black dress, small gold earrings, and no lipstick. I pulled my hair back tight and looked at myself in the mirror for a long time before leaving. My face looked calm, too calm, like someone who had already cried enough and had nothing left to lose. Ethan watched me from the bedroom door. "You don't have to come if you're going to make things worse," he said. I picked up my purse. "That's funny, I was about to say the same thing to you." His mouth tightened, but he said nothing. The drive to Victor and Marion's house was quiet except for the turn signal and the low hum of the engine. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel and stared straight ahead like he was driving to a dentist appointment. I looked out the window and counted streetlights just to keep from saying something I couldn't take back. When we pulled into the driveway, Victor's house looked exactly like it always did. Big stone front, trimmed hedges, perfect windows, everything clean and expensive and cold. A house built for appearances. Inside, Marion was already waiting in the sitting room with a tea tray none of us touched. Victor stood near the fireplace, one hand behind his back, the other holding reading glasses he wasn't wearing. Maya was there too, sitting on the far end of the sofa like she belonged exactly where she was. Victor's eyes landed on me first, then on Maya. His face didn't change much, but I saw it, that tiny flash of panic. "Why is she here?" he asked. Maya crossed one leg over the other. "Because you've all done very stupid things and I enjoy details." Marian looked confused. "Victor, what is this about?" He ignored her. "This is a family matter." I took off my coat and handed it to the housekeeper passing by. "I was family when you wanted someone to blame." That landed. Victor's jaw tightened. Ethan shifted beside me. Marian looked from face to face like she had walked into the middle of a play without a script. "Sit down," Victor said, so I did, not because he told me to, because I wanted front row seats. For a second, nobody spoke. The clock on the mantel ticked. Ice shifted softly in a glass on the side table. Somewhere deeper in the house, a door closed, then Victor cleared his throat. "What happened at dinner was unfortunate." I almost smiled. Unfortunate. That was what he was calling it now, not cruel, not planned, not disgusting. Unfortunate. He looked at me with that fake calm rich men use when they think tone can erase facts. Emotions were high, things were said poorly. I leaned back. "You handed me divorce papers because you think I failed your bloodline." Marian's head snapped toward him. "Victor, you did what?" He didn't look at her. "This is not the time." "Oh, I think it is," Maya said. Victor ignored her too. "The marriage has been under strain for a long time. We were trying to move toward a practical resolution." "Practical resolution?" I let out a short laugh. "You mean replacing me?" Marian went white. "Replacing? What is she talking about?" Ethan finally spoke. "Mom, please." "No," she said sharply, standing up. "No, I want answers right now." Victor turned to her. "Sit down, Marian." That was the wrong move. Because for the first time since I had known her, Marian didn't. She stayed standing. I watched Victor realize in real time that he was losing the room. Good. I reached into my purse and pulled out one folded page, not the whole stack. Just enough. Victor saw it and went still. Marian noticed. "What is that?" I kept my eyes on Victor. "Something your husband doesn't want read out loud." Marian looked at him now, really looked at him, and I saw the first crack hit her face. Not anger, not yet fear. Victor stepped forward. "Lena, be careful." That almost made me laugh. Careful, now he wanted careful. I slowly unfolded the page on my lap. Ethan took one step toward me. "Don't." I looked up at him. "Why? You've all had me living inside your lies long enough." His face drained. Maya spoke without moving. "You might want to let her finish. Every time one of you interrupts, you sound guiltier." Victor's control was slipping fast now. "This is absurd. You have no idea what you're meddling with." I looked right at him. "Oh, I think I do." Then I read the date, just the date. That was enough. Victor's face changed instantly. Marian frowned. "What date is that?" I didn't answer her. I kept my eyes on Victor and said very softly, "Want me to read the rest?" For one long second, nobody breathed. Then Ethan said, "Dad," not angry, not confused, afraid. And that single word told me the one thing I needed most. Ethan didn't know, not all of it. Victor looked at his son, then at me, then at Marian, and I watched the math fail in his head. Too many people, too many lies, too little time. His voice came out low and rough. "Put that paper away." I smiled. "No." And Marian, still standing in the middle of that polished room with her tea growing cold behind her, turned to Victor and asked the question that made the whole house feel like it had shifted under us. "Victor," she said, "what did you do?" Nobody moved. Marian was still standing. Ethan looked like the floor had dropped under him. Victor looked at me like he wanted the paper to burst into flames in my hand. "Victor," Marian said again, slower this time, "what did you do?" He straightened his jacket like that could pull him back together. "Nothing. This has been twisted into some cheap little drama." Maya let out a soft laugh. "That would work better if your face wasn't gray." Victor turned on her. "You've inserted yourself into business that has nothing to do with you." She shrugged. "You made it my business when you made her the family punching bag." I looked down at the page in my hand, then back up at Victor. "You knew Ethan's test results," I said. "You knew he was the one with the fertility issue, and you still sat there and let me be blamed." Marian looked at Ethan so fast it was almost painful. "What is she saying?" Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. That told her enough. She turned back to Victor. "You knew." Victor's voice went flat. "It was a private matter." I almost snapped at that. Private matter. That was what men called cruelty when they wanted to keep it dressed up. A private matter, I said. You made it very public when you shoved divorce papers in front of me. Victor took a step forward. You are dangerously out of line. No, I said, and my voice came out calm as glass. I'm finally in line with the truth. Then I lifted the paper. It says your name, Victor. That did it. He lunged. Not all the way at me, not enough to make it ugly, but enough that Ethan moved instinctively between us. Dad, Ethan snapped. Victor froze. For the first time in all the years I had known him, he looked old, not polished. Not powerful, just old and cornered. Marian's voice shook. What paper is that? Maya answered before I could. A medical record reference. Victor shot her a look full of hate. You don't know what you're reading, Maya smiled. Then explain it. He didn't because he couldn't. I unfolded the page fully now, slow on purpose, and read the line out loud. Procedure, vasectomy. The room went dead. I could actually hear Marian inhale. Ethan turned toward Victor so slowly it made my skin prickle. What? Victor didn't answer. He just stared at me like he could still bully me into silence. Too late, I kept going. Date, July 14th. Almost 34 years ago. Ethan looked at his father, then at his mother, then back at his father again. His voice came out rough. I'm 33. No one had to say the rest. It hung there anyway. Marian took a step back like someone had shoved her. Victor spoke fast, then too fast. That record proves nothing. Maya leaned forward. It proves enough to ask very ugly questions. He rounded on her. Shut up. Marian flinched. Ethan didn't. He stared at Victor with this hard, empty look I had never seen before. Answer me. Victor's face darkened. This is not the way to discuss family history. Family history, I almost laughed. That man could wrap poison in silk and still think it smelled clean. Did you have that procedure? Ethan asked. Victor said nothing. Ethan stepped closer. Did you? Finally, Victor snapped. Yes. That one word cracked the whole room open. Marian sat down hard on the sofa like her knees gave out. Ethan didn't move at all. He just stood there staring at his father with something worse than anger in his face. Disgust. But that was before, Victor said quickly. There were complications. Reversals exist. Timing can be off, Maya cut in. Funny thing about lies, they always need backup dancers. Victor glared at her, but the damage was done. Ethan looked at his mother now. She had gone pale. Really pale. Her hands were clenched in her lap so tight her rings pressed into her skin. Mom, he said. She didn't answer. He took another step. Mom, her eyes filled with tears, and that was all it took. Victor saw it too. He turned toward her. Marian, don't. She looked up at him, and I watched 30-plus years of marriage change shape in 1 second. Not love, not loyalty, recognition. Like she was finally seeing the man she had spent her life standing beside. You let her suffer for this, she whispered. Victor's mouth opened. She stood up so fast the tea tray rattled. You let that girl suffer for this, she said again, louder now, shaking. For your lie, for your pride. Marian, no. Her voice cracked through the room like a whip. Ethan looked from one parent to the other, and I realized something terrible and almost beautiful at the same time. He wasn't just losing me, he was losing the story of his whole life. Then Marian turned to Ethan, tears running now, and said the sentence Victor had probably feared for decades. There's something you were never supposed to know. The room went so quiet I could hear the fire snap in the grate. Ethan stared at his mother like he had forgotten how to breathe. What do you mean? Marian pressed one hand to her chest. Her lipstick was gone from one side of her mouth. Her eyes were wet and wide and full of something I had never seen in her before. Shame. Victor stepped toward her. Marian, enough. She turned on him so fast even he stopped. No, she said. No, you don't get to say that anymore. Her voice shook, but it didn't break. She looked at Ethan, and when she spoke again, it came out thin and raw. Your father and I were told we could not conceive naturally after a procedure he had done. He was humiliated, angry. He cared more about what people would think than anything else. Victor's face went hard. That is not the full story. Marian ignored him. We went to a clinic, she said. Quietly, secretly, there was a donor. Ethan just stared at her. I watched the words hit him one by one. Clinic, donor, secretly. He looked at Victor. You're not my biological father, Victor snapped. I raised you. That wasn't an answer. And the second he said it, Ethan knew it too. He took one slow step back, not dramatic, not loud, just one step. But in that step I watched a lifetime of obedience fall away. Marian's tears were running now. You were wanted, Ethan, please know that, you were loved. Victor laughed once under his breath, mean and bitter. Loved enough to destroy this family today, apparently. That did it for Ethan. He turned so fast I almost flinched. Destroy this family, he said. His voice was low, but it had steel in it now. You let her take the blame for me. You let her sit through all of that while you knew. He pointed at me without looking away from Victor. Then you tried to throw her out over an heir. An heir. Victor lifted his chin, still trying to wear control like a suit that fit. This is bigger than your marriage. There are assets, a family name, a legacy. I almost smiled, even now, even with the lie bleeding out all over his perfect rug. Legacy, that was still the word he chose. Maya stood up then. She smoothed the front of her blazer and looked at Victor like she was checking a stain on a shoe. You really don't get it, she said. Victor glared at her. Get out of my house. She didn't move. The only thing keeping this man standing, she said, nodding toward him, was the story he told about himself. Strong father, pure line, keeper of the Dalton name, and it was garbage. Victor took a step toward her. Watch yourself, Maya smiled. Or what? He stopped, because for the first time in his life the threat didn't land. Ethan turned to his mother again. How long have you been hiding this? Marian closed her eyes. Your whole life. He let out a breath that sounded like pain, then he asked the question I had already asked myself. Did Dad know before I was born? Marian looked at Victor. That told him yes before she said it. Victor snapped, of course I knew. The room shifted again, not because it was new information, because of how he said it. No regret, no sorrow, just irritation, like we were all wasting his time. Ethan looked at him with open disgust now. So all this heir nonsense, what was that, performance? Victor's face darkened. It was about order. I laughed then, I couldn't help it. A short, cold sound, everybody looked at me. Order? I said, you mean control. Victor turned to me and there it was again, that old poisonous calm, cracked now around the edges. You should have walked away quietly. I stood up. My legs were steady, my hands were steady. My whole body felt cleaner than it had in months. No, I said, you should have. He stared at me, so I gave him the last piece. Before I came here today, I said, I made copies. Victor's face changed, not much, just enough. Marian looked up sharply. Ethan too. Copies of what? Ethan asked. I kept my eyes on Victor. Everything we found, the clinic references, the timeline, the records, the private arrangement your father discussed behind my back. All of it? Victor took one step toward me. You wouldn't dare. I smiled. This time it wasn't small. I already did. His whole body went still, not frozen with anger. Frozen with the sick understanding that this time he was the one who had lost control of the room. I left a sealed set with your estate attorney, I said, and another with the trustee who handles the Dalton Family Foundation. Marian gasped softly. Victor's face went white. That was the thing about men like him. They can survive pain, they can survive family fights. What they cannot survive is doubt inside the circles they built to worship them. Maya picked up her bag. I figured the people managing the money should know how much your heir story is worth. Victor's mouth opened, but no sound came out. For the first time since I had met him, Victor Dalton looked small, not rich, not powerful. Not untouchable, just an old man in an expensive room choking on his own lie. Ethan turned to me then, and I saw it in his face. Not hope, not apology that could fix anything, just the full weight of what he had done. Lena, he said. I held up my hand. No, he stopped. Tears stood in his eyes, but I felt nothing. That part of me was gone now. You let me beg doctors for answers you already had, I said. You let your father tear me apart while you hid behind shame. You watched me drown in a lie that belonged to you. I took a breath. So whatever happens in this house after I walk out, that's yours. He looked wrecked. Good. Marian sank back onto the sofa, staring at nothing. Maya came to stand beside me. Victor finally found his voice. You ruined everything. I looked him right in the eye. No, I said. I just stopped protecting it. Then I picked up my coat. Nobody tried to stop me, not Ethan, not Marian, not even Victor. I walked to the front door with Maya beside me, the same way she had stood beside me at that dinner table when they thought they were ending my life. Behind us, I heard raised voices start again. Ethan, Marian, Victor, all of them finally turning on each other now that I was no longer there to carry the blame. Maya opened the door. Cold air hit my face. Clean air. I stepped out onto the stone porch, down the front steps, and into the evening like a woman leaving a fire she did not start and did not need to save. Because in the end, I didn't take their name, their house, or their money. I took the lie that held them together.